Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, episode 303, When Friends Vanish, Why It Happens, and How to Handle It.
Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, the only podcast that offers a proven process to help you work through your grief, to grow, evolve, and create a future you can truly look forward to. Here's your host, Master Certified Life Coach, Grief Expert, Widow, and Mom, Krista St-Germain.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm recording 2 episodes today because we're getting ready to go to Italy, and I'm excited about that. It's going to be a good time. Haven't seen any of Italy before. It's flown right over it. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, something I'm not excited about, but still experiencing as of late, which I wanted to share with you because you will understand, is how much these recent plane crashes have affected me. And of course, no one, even though I'm from Wichita and the plane that crashed in Washington, D.C. was a plane coming from my city to Washington, D.C. I did not personally know anyone. Of course, it's a small world and I know many people who know people, but I didn't personally know anyone, nor did I know anyone who was lost in the crash that happened in Philadelphia with the Learjet. And then just recently, this Delta accident that also happened up in Canada with another CRJ. And the connection for me, of course, yes, Wichita, but also it's Bombardier. It's those products, right? Because I used to work for Bombardier. That's how I met Hugo. And what I am noticing is how weird it has been to wonder what he would say about what's happened and the knowledge that he had about that, just an engineer obsessed with aviation, right? To watch all of his friends who are highly technically minded discuss these things on Facebook and kind of talk about what they think went wrong. And it's just so strange to not have hardly anything happen with a Bombardier plane and then to have 3 planes so quickly. So it just makes me miss him. It makes me wonder what he's thinking about all of it. It makes me sad for all the families impacted. And those are just the kinds of things which really feeds quite naturally into what we're going to talk about today, those secondary losses that we don't really anticipate. I don't think I anticipated after Hugo died that I would be considering a plane crash a secondary loss, but that is how I experience it. So I just wanted to share that with you. I think the more we can talk about, the more I can share my experience, I think the more I can normalize how unique, but also how similar so many of our experiences are. And I think it would be really easy for someone to say, well, her husband died so long ago and all she does is grief work. And so surely these types of things don't affect her anymore. And they would just be wrong. And I think it's important to be honest about that. Also, it is dog barking hour because I have decided to record a podcast. So if you hear my dogs bark, nothing I can do about it. Okay, last thing before we get into the podcast, the actual topic, which is to remind you that Grief Essentials starts April 1st. So Grief Essentials is my 8-week program for those who want to make early grief easier. And I don't mean early grief based on the date on a calendar. I mean when grief is overwhelming to you and you are looking for ways to make it less overwhelming and more manageable. That's what Grief Essentials is for. It's an 8-week program, short, easy to do, powerful, all the things I wish I would have had after Hugo died that I just didn't. And so we start April 1st, coachingwithkrista.com/grief essentials. Early bird pricing is on just for a couple more days. And even if you miss the early bird pricing, I really want to encourage you to get signed up now because we'll be sending a powerful workshop straight to your inbox every week from the moment you join to the moment that Grief Essentials starts. That means you can start getting help now. You don't actually have to wait to feel better, even though we don't start until April 1st. So coachingwithkrista.com/grief essentials. It is there for you. All right, let's talk about when friends vanish, because it can be a really surprising struggle in grief. We know that we're going to grieve the person and we expect that, but sometimes we don't expect to grieve friendships and relationships. So if you have been abandoned by friends, you are not imagining it. You are not alone. I think it really is one of the hardest parts of widowhood for many, those losses that we didn't expect. And that can definitely include the loss of friendships. And again, this is what we call a secondary loss, right? The primary loss was the loss of our person. We expect that that's going to be painful, but we don't always see the knock-on losses, the ripple effect losses, the secondary losses that happen because of the primary loss. They wouldn't have happened if the primary loss hadn't happened. So friendship shifting, people disappearing, relationships feeling different. These are all parts of grief too. And that's what I want to talk about, why it happens, why it's part of the grief experience, and what you can do about it in a way that actually helps you. All right. So by the end of the episode, I hope you'll have a new perspective on friendships after loss and why they change, and some really practical ways that you can navigate these changes without feeling resentful and without isolating yourself. All right. Let's dive in. Okay. So first, why does it even happen? If you're anything like I was, you might have some relationships where you are feeling hurt or rejected, or maybe even angry about the way that someone disappeared from your life or started treating you differently. And remember, secondary loss, right? It's not just losing your partner, it's losing all the ways that you imagined life would be after. And it doesn't feel that way anymore. It's not like that anymore. And friendships can be such a big part of that. So why do they vanish? A few reasons, I think. I think some of them don't know what to say or do. So they just avoid. It's so uncomfortable. They just duck out. For some people, it's actually that what we're going through is their worst nightmare. It reminds them of their own mortality. It reminds them of something that they just absolutely don't want to think about, don't think they can handle. They don't want to look. For some people, they genuinely think that we need space and they don't want to intrude. They really think that pulling back is best or being different is best. Some people have no capacity to support us without trying to fix us. They perceive us as in need of fixing, right? They have that righting reflex. They want to right something that feels wrong to them. And so they get weird and they don't treat us the way that we're hoping that they will treat us or used to treat us. And sometimes it's a case of that person or those people having been more connected to your partner than they were to you. That happens too. So here's what I think. Not everyone who was part of your life before was meant to be part of your life now. And that doesn't make it easy. But what I hope is that you will stop taking all of those disappearing friendships as a sign that something is wrong with you, because it doesn't mean anything about you, right? It means something about them. And that's not something we have to be mad about, but it is important that if we are having feelings about it, that we honor those feelings and allow them to pass, right? Friendship loss is still loss. So of course, if grief is the natural human response to a perceived loss, it's normal that we would grieve those people that we thought would be there for us, the ones who said, I'll always be there, and then they weren't, right? And so give yourself permission to grieve the loss of those relationships, even if they don't completely leave your life, right? When you expected it to be one way and it went another, that is still grief. So it doesn't mean that you only get to grieve the people who just disappeared. It can be, grieve the changes, grieve the ways that you thought it would be that don't compare to how it is. And to you, that feels like loss. It's okay to feel disappointed. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel sad, right? One thing I will caution that can sometimes be really helpful is to make sure that we are separating the thoughts from facts. And by that, I mean, if someone hasn't reached out to you in a while, that's a fact. They haven't reached out. But often what's happening is that we then tell ourselves a story about it, right? We have a thought about it. We make the fact that they haven't reached out in a while mean they don't care about me or something is wrong with me, right? Or I'm not going to have any more friends. Or, we tell ourselves all of these stories, these thoughts that make the fact so much harder. So be cognizant of the meaning that you're assigning, because sometimes it's making the loss feel heavier than it actually needs to. Okay, so some tactical things, some things we can actually do. How do we handle friendships that have changed or disappeared? I'm going to offer you 5 things. The first, we just got to accept that some friendships have an expiration date, right? Not all friendships are meant to last forever. Relationships. And that doesn't mean they weren't valuable when they existed. It just means that they weren't going to be any longer than they were. That's the first thing. Second, we always get to decide who we want in our lives. And sometimes we forget that. So I want to remind you of it. Are there friendships that you used to have that maybe you'd like to reconnect with? Are there people that you miss that you would like to give energy to that you haven't been giving energy to? Are you holding on to friendships, to relationships that don't feel good anymore and you don't want them anymore? You get to decide who you want in your life. And just because someone's been in your life for a long time or hasn't been in your life for a long time doesn't mean you can't make a different choice. So give yourself permission to decide who you want in your life. The third thing is to right size your relationships where needed. So if someone only reaches out when they want something, if it feels like an obligation instead of a choice to stay connected to someone, right? That's good information to have. That's information that says, maybe I don't want to be investing as much time in this person. Maybe I don't want to be spending as much time with this person. Maybe I don't want to cut them completely out, right? Because we do always get to decide, but maybe I want to right size. Maybe I want to make the amount of time and energy and emotional bandwidth that I invest in this person aligned with what I want their role to be in my life now. So where could your relationships use a right sizing? Number 4, allow for relationships to evolve. Allow for people to evolve. Sometimes people will step back, and then when they're ready, they'll step forward again. Right? Sometimes how they behave when you are in early grief is not indicative of how they will always behave. So if you want to, allow for those people and those relationships to evolve and change. So that kind of is the way that we are as humans. We're not always the same way. Even though sometimes we'd like to believe that we are, we're not usually. And number 5 is to be open to new connections. Sometimes the people who will support you in this new chapter are not the people you expected. I definitely found that to be true for me. But they are out there, and sometimes they come out of the woodwork and they come in the most unexpected places. And so I want to encourage you to be open to that. Be open to letting some relationships go or close without making it mean that they weren't valuable. Be open to new ones forming, even if they were unexpected. And if you want new connections and new support, sometimes that means more than being open. Sometimes that means you actually got to go get it. Sometimes that means you got to go build relationships. And I really want to encourage you to do that. I think we are communal creatures. So seek out spaces where people understand widowhood. Seek out spaces where you do not have to explain your grief. There are spaces out there. Of course, you can come coach in one of my containers. Those are the kinds of women that are there already. But it's not the only place. But seek them out. Find connections. Find connections in places that align with who you are now. And part of that might be about widowhood. Part of that might be about other aspects of your life or your identity that are changing since this loss. And I want to also remind you, not every connection or friendship or relationship that you have needs to be super deep. Sometimes having somebody to just go to the bookstore with or grab coffee with or, do a little lunch with, there's still value in that. Different relationships for different purposes. One of my very favorite things in Mom Goes On is seeing the relationships that form, seeing women who thought they were so alone and who didn't have anyone in their world who understood them come into an environment where so much can go unspoken. And they're forming friendships in the chat of our Zoom calls, and they're messaging each other inside of our online space, and they're getting together in real life, and they're traveling together and forming friends that they have always wanted, but had struggled to find. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that is available to you too. All right. So losing friendships after loss is painful. It is grief. And that does not mean you have to stay isolated. Secondary losses are real. They do not have to define what is next for you. All right. As always, if you are ready to take this work deeper, to surround yourself with women who truly get what you're going through, Mom Goes On is here for you. coachingwithkrista.com/work with me. You can find all about it there. If you're finding this podcast helpful, I really do invite you to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps more widows find this podcast. Also, we can offset the nasty review I just got a few weeks ago. You would think that stuff wouldn't bother me anymore, but I'm still human. Somebody decided it was totally worthless. She was very mad at me, did not like my podcast at all. So if you haven't rated or reviewed, go offset hers, would you? Okay, seriously. That's what I have for you this week. Remember, I love you. You've got this. If you have not told yourself that lately, please get in front of a mirror and do it. Look at that reflection and tell that woman, I love you. You've got this. Okay? Okay. Take care, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and want to create a future you can truly get excited about even after the loss of your spouse, I invite you to join my Mom Goes On coaching program. It's small group coaching just for widowed moms like you, where I'll help you figure out what's holding you back and give you the tools and support you need so you can move forward with confidence. Please don't settle for a new normal that's less than what you deserve. Go to coachingwithkrista.com and click Work With Me for details and next steps. I can't wait to meet you.